I was on the 81st floor of the first tower, sitting at my desk, and we saw the plane coming into the building. The plane was 9 floors above me. It came in, the body of the plane came in 9 floors above me. The right wing lands to my boss's office, actually. It was pretty orderly. My boss said a plane hit the building, call who you have to call and get out. So I called my husband, I called my father, grabbed my pocketbook, started down the stairs, got to about the 60th floor, used my inhaler because I have asthma, then got down to about the 44th floor and started to panic again, and my boss says, well, use your inhaler. And I said, I can't, I just used it. A fireman was coming up the stairs, and he heard me say that I couldn't breathe. And it was a young kid. He had a tank on his back, and he had a hose on his left shoulder. Took his mask off, gave me his mask, put it on my face, and he said, just breathe, honey, just breathe. You'll be okay. And I took some breaths in from the oxygen, and my friend Susan, who I was going downstairs with, she said, rest with me. And I said, no, Susan, we have to get out of here. And Susan said, no, rest with me. I can't go down the stairs. And I said, no, Susan, we have to get down. And my boss, we were going down the stairs with, he says, okay, Susan, if you have to rest. He says, but get down the stairs. So we started going down the stairs. I gave my pocketbook and my suit jacket to Steve. And I started going down the stairs, and Susan stayed behind, and I was starting, trying to get down the steps, and I was banging my legs and my arms and whatever, trying to get down. Lost my shoes, and the lights had gone out in the stairwell earlier in the trip, and I guess, I don't know, maybe that's when Tower 2 got hit, but who knew? Got down to about the 11th floor now, and somebody else that I used to work with, she started to panic. And Steve had my pocketbook and everything, and I said to Steve, don't lose me, Steve. He says, don't worry. He says, I'm right here. And then when we got down to the 6th floor now, it was pretty dark, and water was above my knees, and they started sending people to the left and right, and they sent Steve with my pocketbook and everything one way, and they sent me the other way, and I had no pocketbook, no identification, no nothing, and but when I got out of when I was in the atrium, that which used to be the atrium, there were trees on the ground and pilings and everything, and me and these two guys that I used to work with, we were walking down the escalator, and you heard this like ruffling noise, and they pulled me, and we got across the street, and by the time we got across the street, we were like in City Hall Park, that's when Tower 1 came down, and then we started walking, and I wound up in Little Italy, and by that time it was 11:30. I called my husband, let my husband know that I was okay, called my father, and then we started walking, and we went up to where we used to work at 57th Street, and by that time it was 5 o'clock at night, and we started our journey back home, and I got home at 9 o'clock. My husband took me to the University Hospital that was in Staten Island. They gave me 2 nebulizer treatments. After they gave me the nebulizer treatments, they gave me a full-body x-ray where I found that I had contusions and I had 3 broken toes. And then the next morning, I was supposed to be on Good Morning America because a girl who saw me, so that I had the soot on my, all over my body, she said that, can I give you some water? And I said, please. And she told me her name is Jennifer, and she was a producer for Good Morning America. And she asked me if I would tell my story, so I told her I would. And then right after President Bush spoke, me and I don't know, about maybe 7 or 8 other people were on Good Morning America to talk about our experiences. And then I was, on there. And then 4 years later, we moved down here. because my husband didn't want me to live in New York anymore. My husband and I was 15 friends that day, and Susan, who I just spoke about, she's passed. They found her body on Christmas Day that year.
The training center was on the 61st floor of Tower 2. We started on Monday, September the 10th. Tuesday we started fairly early in the morning. We had a coffee break around 9 o'clock. The 4 plates are huge at the World Trade Center. It was the biggest class it ever had, 285 people over 3 rooms, so I had to go some distance to go get a cup of coffee. I was on the west side of the tower. I went to the south side, looked down, and I saw looked like to be fire on the ground. I saw a massive paper flying in front of the window. And my first thought was, what kind of neat New York thing is this? Because you go up to New York and everything's a circus up there. So I just went back and I went back to the room actually, and a couple of guys were looking out the west side again because it's a spectacular view overlooking the Statue of Liberty. And all of a sudden I saw this flash of fire from above, and the glass cracked. And you think, what could that be? I'm on the 61st floor. And just then a Morgan Stanley guard went flying by the room and he said, "Get the hell out of here." And that sounded like pretty good advice, so I started down the stairwell. He guided us to a stairwell. And I thought, this isn't going to happen. I've never evacuated a building ever, and I've always worked in high rises. About the 40th floor, I thought, I'm probably going to stop. And the announcement came over the loudspeaker that the building's safe, stay where you are, or go back. We carried on for whatever reason, and about the 20th floor, I got knocked off my feet. The middle of the building, down to the bottom. The lights went out, the emergency lights came back on again, got up, started back down again, and smoke started coming up the stairwell. So what do? You're going to walk into smoke. I put my tie over my mouth and just carried on down the way. Got to the concourse. If you know, the World Trade Center had a big patch of grass, and I just kept thinking about going and flopping out in that patch of grass. Got to the bottom, and I got to the bottom, and there was a guy standing there, and he said, "Go that way." And we didn't know why. We didn't know anything about. Somebody mentioned a light airplane hitting a building, and it didn't make any sense. So we started down the concourse. So we were in the southwest corner of the complex. We started through the concourse, and all the stores were empty. It was all vacant, but there was a cordon of people who guided people down the concourse. Wherever you had to make a turn, there was somebody there. Got to the northeast corner, and someone said, "Go up those stairwell, and then you're out." So we did. I got up. So that put me in the northwest corner of the complex. I guess what is the most prophetic impact of the whole event on me is I walked out of that building and went across the street to the church. As I walked across that street, a pile of people were running into the building. And that is what I see their faces. I see the people going in the opposite direction to what I was doing. I guess what I learned that day was the heroes aren't the people who are leaving the building. The heroes are the people going into that building. And that's why my whole vision of first responders is etched in my mind from that vision of the heroes going into that building. From there, we spent some time at the church. We still didn't really know what was happening. The buildings were deteriorating, but we didn't really know why. People gathered at the church, and there's 3 of us from Clearwater who decided to go up Broadway, and I had to walk 70 blocks back because nothing was running. The week, that was Tuesday, of course. I got out on Saturday morning on Amtrak. For the whole week in New York, the whole city was in lockdown. I had to go to a daily meeting at Morgan Stanley. It was 34th Street. It was about a 40-block walk. And when you go through that walk, there were sirens going the whole time. We didn't know that anything that serious was happening. They were going down. There was some panic in the stairwells, and every now and again, a mature voice would say, "Calm down." And the whole crowd would calm down. It was kind of an amazing experience because I'd never been in a situation where just a voice, a calm, soft voice, brought the whole crowd down.
We were having breakfast that morning and having coffee, and we had the news on, and we saw a plane hit the tower, and it was a perfectly clear day, and they said it was a small plane. And when Gary looked at the hole, he said, "That's not a small plane, that's a big plane, and we're being attacked." And then our son was in the police academy, but it was huge, so they had 2 shifts. He was on a 4 to 12. So we called him and said, "You better get up and put the TV on, you're going to be called in." And when we were all watching the TV, the second plane hit. But they kept saying it was American, and they kept saying it was small planes and or American Airlines. And Victor flew for United, and we weren't even sure that he was flying that day, so we really didn't even consider that. And Drew was called in, and about 4 hours later, I got a phone call from my best friend that I know since I'm 10, and she was working with my twin sister, who happened to be at Ellen's house. And she called me to tell me that it was Victor. And she tells me all I did was scream. And she still to this day feels bad that she was the one who called me, and I keep telling her, I'm glad it was you, because I needed you to be there for me, and I'm glad that if I had to find out that news, that you were there for me. And then it was horrible too, because we couldn't get through to anybody in New York. The phone lines were dead. But the cell phones, some of the cell phones were working. So my brother lives on Long Island, and my brother tried to go immediately to Pennsylvania to my sister, but he couldn't get off the island because they closed everything, all the bridges and everything. And I finally reached my sister later on that day. And Victor, if Victor did anything, he called you 50,000 times a day. And I said, Ellen, are you sure? Are you sure? And she said, Victor didn't call. And that's how she knew for sure it was him. And she said, Victor would have called me.